Hello students, now we will study about the another important, the famous world civilization, that is the Mesopotamian civilization. The Mesopotamian civilization is an area lies in the valley between two rivers. This valley lies between the two rivers. These two rivers are the Euphrates and Tigris, which is a fertile region. In that fertile area, the Mesopotamian civilization flourished, and it is the land which inspires awe and fascinates the fascination is called as the land between the rivers, which inspires the way and admires, and fascination is called as a land between two rivers, or the land between the rivers, or the Mesopotamia by the Greeks. The area which inspires, which admires, means the area which helps for the settlement of the human habitation. And two rivers, the two rivers Euphrates and Tigris, had made this West Asian barren land a very fertile land. West Asian barren land. It was a barren land, but due to these two rivers, it became a very fertile region. It was the fertility of this area that attracted the people to it. Since the food crops could be grown with little effort, the northern valley tribes and the southern nomadic tribes of the desert try to establish, the people, the northern and southern area people, they try to establish their hold, their supremacy on this land. The rivalry between these two tribes led to the number of endless wars. They fought many wars. The tribes of the northern part tribes and the tribes of the southern part tribes, they fought many wars, many battles to establish their control over this area. However, in the midst these conflict, there emerged a civilization, strong and brave race. There emerged a strong race, one strong race. That is, the Sumerians were the first ones to evolve the system of writing in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians were a Sumerian race. It was a very strong, and they were very brave, and it was the one who evolved the system of writing in Mesopotamia. For 30 centuries, all those who entered fertile valleys were the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, and used this system of writing, which is called as the cuneiform. Who came to this land, the foreigners who came to this land, this valley, like the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, used this system of writing, and that system of writing is called as cuneiform. All these races, they followed the same type of writing system, and that is called as cuneiform. So the writing system of the Mesopotamians was the cuneiform. The central area of this civilization was southern part of the valley between the Euphrates and Tigris, and from the olden days, this area had been referred to as Babylonia. That part is referred as the Babylonia. So the southern part of this region, southern part of the Mesopotamia is called as Babylonia, and the northern part of the Babylonia was called as Akkad. The northern part is called as Akkad, and southern part of this region is called as Babylonia. And northern part of the Sumeria was known as Assyria. Northern part of the Mesopotamia is called as the Assyria, like the different part was named by, called by different name. You know, the southern part of this valley, the southern part of Mesopotamia was called as the Babylonia, and the northern part is called as Babylonia, and the northern part of Babylonia is called as Akkad, and southern part is called as the Sumer. The northern part of Mesopotamia was known as Assyria. So there were four parts, you know, Babylonia, then Akkad, Sumer, and the Assyria are the four parts of the four direction of this valley, four direction of the Mesopotamia. Southern, you know, Mesopotamia, the southern part of Mesopotamia is called as the Babylonia, and the northern part of the Babylonia was called as Akkad, and the southern part is known as Sumer, and the northern part of Mesopotamia was known as Assyria. The history of Mesopotamia is a strong and endless hatred and conflict. Its history was endless because a number of dynasties were established. They were engaged in the endless wars for the purpose of establishing their command, for the purpose of establishing their supremacy over this land. So the history of Mesopotamia is a story of endless hatred and a conflict. They fought all the dynasties, they fought number of wars, they fought number of wars and battles to establish their control over this fertile region. The Sumerians, the hilly tribe from the north, Sumerians, who were the tribal people of the north, were the first to arrive here, who used to worship their god on the top of the hills. They worship the god on the top of the hills, and when they come to the plains, they built artificial hills. When they come to the valleys, you know, first of all, they worship their god on the top of the hill, but when they come to the plains, that time they constructed artificial hills and established their places of worship there. They established the places of worship, that is, the temples were constructed, and they began to worship the god, and these were called as ziggurats. These were called as ziggurats. Ziggurats means the place of worship of the god constructed by the Sumerians. When they came down to the plains, when they were on the hills, they worshipped their god on the top of the hills, but when they came down to the plains, they began to construct artificial hills, and they constructed the places of worship of the god, and these places were called as ziggurats. Ziggurat, they did not know how to build the stairs. They have no idea about how to build the stairs, means how to build the steps. Therefore, surrendered them with the sloping galleries. All these ziggurats were the sloping galleries. The Jews call these the towers of Babel. The Jews, they called as the towers of the Babel. The Sumerians had entered Mesopotamia in 4000 BC. Later they were overpowered by the Akkadians. After the Sumerians, the Akkadians came to this area by defeating the Sumerians, one of the tribe of the Arabian desert. Akkadians belong to the Arabian tribes, the tribes of the Arabian desert, and these are known as the Semites. After 1000 years of the Akkadians came to be ruled by the Amorites. after 1,000 years of their rule, they were also overpowered by the Amorites. So the Akkadian rule was only for 1,000 years. After the 1,000 years of their rule, they were overpowered by the Amorites. Another Semitic tribe, the most famous king of the Amorites was Hammurabi. Hammurabi, who was the most famous king of the Amorites. You know, Hammurabi, he was a very famous king of the Amorites. He was famous for his code in law, because the main source of the law code of Hammurabi are in rock edicts. They are found in the rock edicts in 1901 CE. In 1901, these rock edicts are found, and today this has been kept in Louvre Museum of Paris. These rock edicts are kept in the Museum of Paris. Hammurabi's law enforced the logic of an eye for eye, an eye for an eye. This code, you know, the code of Hammurabi, it enforces the logic that an eye for an eye, tooth for the tooth, tooth for a tooth for a tooth. That was the logic of the Hammurabi's code in law, and this code in law was enforced to protect, probably in a return, they were probably written to protect the rights of all section of the society, to protect the rights of all section of the society. That type of rules were formulated by the Hammurabi. So he was noted, he was famous for his code in law. It was the greatest achievement of the Hammurabi, because for the protection of the people, for the protection of the common people, especially the women and the slaves, he enforced this type of code of law. Now after Amorites, Hittites came to power. After defeating the Amorites, Hittites came to power, occupied the valley and destroyed all that they could not carry away. They destroyed all these beautiful ziggurats, palaces built by the Hammurabi or the Amorites, and these Hittites were defeated by the Assyrians. After Hittites, Assyrians came to power, who were the followers of the Asura, the desert god. Assyrians were the followers of Asura, the followers of, or the Asura means the desert god. Assyrians occupied the whole West Asia and Egypt till 7th century BCE. Till 7th century BCE, they ruled over this fertile region. And they also collected taxes from all the people, and they run the administration properly. And afterwards, another race came to Mesopotamia, that is the Chandalians overpowered the Assyrians, and Chandalians came to power, re-established Babylonia in 7th century BCE. They re-established Babylonia because Babylonia was completely destroyed by the Hittites, then Assyrians, and when Chandalians came to power, they re-established Babylonia in 7th century BCE and developed into a prominent capital of that time. So Babylonia became an important capital of that time. Nebuchadnezzar was the greatest king among them. Nebuchadnezzar, who was the greatest king of the Chandalians, he was the famous king of that dynasty. He encouraged the study of science. He gave importance to the science. So he encouraged the science, and his greatest achievement is the construction of the hanging garden. Hanging garden was built by the Nebuchadnezzar. Here, according to the legendary, hanging garden were created on the banks of river Euphrates. On the banks of the river Euphrates, this garden was constructed around 7th century BCE. This was one of the 7th wonders of the world. Hanging garden, it was one of the 7th wonders of the world. But it is surprising to note that Babylonian cuneiform records which make mention of that city. Most of the scholars of the view that the king Nebuchadnezzar was the one who created the garden. According to the opinion of the scholars, historians, Nebuchadnezzar was the creator of that hanging garden. Here, Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Amitis, was from Mede. Amitis was the wife of Nebuchadnezzar. To console his wife, he constructed that garden. Here, because his wife, Amitis, she missed the beautiful environment of her motherland. Beautiful garden, beautiful trees, hills, flowers of her motherland. So to console her wife, he constructed the hanging garden. Some scholars opined that the garden were created by the Assyrian queen Sammu-rameth. Some believed that, some opined that this garden was created by the Assyrian queen Sammu-rameth, but in reality, gardens did not hang in the air. But in reality, the gardens did not hanging in the air. The trees and branches grew at different levels. The trees of the garden and the branches of the trees, they grow at different levels. And when the branches hang at different levels, they gave the onlookers an impression of being hanging gardens. They gave onlookers an impression of being hanging the garden. The Euphrates provided water for that garden because it is built, it is constructed on the banks of the river Euphrates. So this river provides water for that garden. So this garden was constructed by the Nebuchadnezzar, who belonged to the Chandalian dynasty of Mesopotamia. But afterwards, during the 6th century BCE, Chandalians were also come under the power of the Persians. 200 years later, Alexander transformed this place of the Semitic people into a Greek province. So the Alexander, he merged this area or this province, Semitic people, into a Greek province. After the rule of the Romans and the Turks who followed Alexander, this civilization declined and turned into wilderness. It turned into the wilderness after the rule of the Romans and Turks who followed the Alexander. This region or this civilization turned into the wilderness area. So here you have to study about the dynasties ruled over the Mesopotamian civilization, Mesopotamian area, and you have to write about their contribution. For example, the Nebuchadnezzar, who belonged to the Chandalians, dynasty. And Amorites, the famous king of the Amorites was Hammurabi. Here Hammurabi is famous for his code of laws.